So we're going to react to a video about third places. This video was sent to me. It's a Twitter video, so we're going to take a look at it and see what my young man here with the beautiful mustache has to say.
Talk about the importance of third places. A third place is somewhere people hang out that isn't home and isn't work. Like cafes, clubs, bars, libraries, churches, parks, plazas, barbershops. You get the idea. This concept was coined by Ray Oldenburg, who described them as the anchors of communities, where relationships are formed through spontaneous conversations and art and activities. And throughout the US, we've lost them. In his book, Bowling Alone.
All right, no doubt about it. No doubt about it that we've lost those third places because, or let me say this, but we haven't lost the third places. The third places have been replaced. The third places have been replaced by forums, comment sections, social media, things like that. You know, what he's saying and what kind of third places used to be were communal gatherings of like-minded people, right? Like a bowling club is going to be for people who are interested in bowling, right? Then inside of that, then you'll have cliques that form of members of the bowling club who like sports, members of the bowling club who like outdoors, members of the bowling clubs who whatever. You see what I'm saying? And then you form your little bonds, you form your friendships, and you create friends. And a lot of those, like I used to play a lot of adult softball or adult league softball, and in the team, you know, we're all there for one reason, to play softball. You know, we're all at that point, you're connected because you're guys who want to do something athletic, who want to do something physical, compete in a game. And then inside of that, it's like, oh, you like professional wrestling too? Oh, you like playing poker too? You like sports too? And then you start to build off of those relationships. Those are lost, right? Like, where do people go? Where do people go to talk sports? They go to YouTube comments, they go to forums, they go to message boards, they go to Twitter. Where do people go to date? Right? The third place to meet girls or meet guys used to be bars, nightclubs, things like that. And now the places to date are Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, JDate, you know, Farmers Only. Not there's anything wrong with that. It's just very, 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 very different. You know, a lot of our communication now is being done across digital spaces, even your own friends, right? You can talk to your friends every day via social media, via text, via WhatsApp, via Snapchat, via whatever. You could theoretically talk to someone every single day, but never actually see them in person. That's a wild, wild concept.
Alone, Robert Putnam noted this has been a steady decline for decades, with dropping club memberships, church attendance, and other forms of social participation. Now, the causes behind this trend are complex and have to do with technology, polarization, institutional distrust, and the splintering of Christianity as our culture's default.
So also another thing is the pandemic, right? So I'm not sure when this video was filmed. I'm assuming it's after the pandemic. The pandemic changed a lot of stuff because it made people realize what they could do in their own world, I guess. And it forced people to be alone. And I think people are socially kind of behind because I can already see it. Like, people are not comfortable in very normal social situations. Something as simple as being on the elevator with somebody. Something as simple as walking like this in a hallway. You know, like the anxiety people get of, should I smile? Should I nod? Should I say hello? Should I look ahead? Should I look down? I work in a corporate setting and I see it every day. I see it. People are so tense and so awkward in those moments when a couple years ago, there was a very normal situation, you know? So, and that took out things like the gym. You know, like the gym was a place where people were basically forced to go and forced to have these social interactions. Then all of a sudden, you didn't have to go to the gym, right? You just started working out, or you couldn't go to the gym. You started working out at your house. Then you cut the gym membership. Then you haven't re-upped because you haven't used it because of the pandemic. So you've been doing yoga, or you've been doing things like that at your house. Let's take yoga, for example, or Pilates. It used to be, if you want to do MMA, if you want to do boxing, if you want to do yoga, Pilates, any group class like that, you had to go into a group. Now you can do digital memberships to get those same classes via YouTube or via other things. There's great yoga channels on YouTube that I use. I've never been to a yoga class. I've done yoga for, at this point, probably 3 or 4 years. And I've never been to a yoga class. There's one literally 500 feet from my apartment, but I've never gone because I don't need to. You know, so those what used to be forced social interactions and forced gatherings don't exist anymore.
Religion. That said, it's also largely perpetuated by car-dependent suburban sprawl. You see, all cities, big and small, used to have densely populated downtowns where people experienced chance encounters and supported local businesses with foot traffic. As Euclidean zoning segregated suburban housing from shopping districts, those places slowly died out. Then
So that's another interesting thing. I've always heard that the best cities and the most happy cities, the most livable cities, are cities that most represent college campuses. And that's because people like walkability. People like being able to move around, walk space to space. They like everything to be kind of together. They like kind of a neighborhood feeling. And usually cities that kind of look like college campuses or kind of have the same feel, usually people enjoy those places the most. What he's talking about here is that what happened was neighborhoods, and I'm sure this has happened around where I live and where I grew up, is that there is no downtown, right? Downtown, it was transformed into like a corporate America hellhole where it's these big, huge like shopping places, like an outlet or something like that, where it's just like a Target, Dick's Sporting Goods, a Best Buy, and 50 restaurants, and that's where people go. That's like the hub. That's become the hub, and there's no downtown. There's no walkable areas. I live in New Orleans, and I live downtown, so it's a very walkable area, and I love walking around. And I love walking around and walking to a bar, walking to a restaurant, and things like that. And I like doing that, right? But a lot of people just don't anymore, and a lot of people can't anymore. A lot of people live, they'll live 40 minutes outside of the city, and they'll live in places like he's walking, where it's just like these big neighborhoods that aren't connected to anything, and you're spending all your time in the car.
Then private companies tried to fill the void with malls as the new town square, which were dominated by big businesses. But then they...
I mean, am I the best or am I the best? But that's true. And you saw it go from when I was growing up. I'm in my early 30s. But when I was growing up, the mall and the movie theater were places where you went to socialize and be cool. Well, those malls were replaced with the big things that I'm talking about, and those aren't really made for walking around and all that. And then movie theaters were replaced with streaming services.
They started dying too when online shopping took over. So now we've lost most of our gathering places outside of major cities. The third places most suburbs have today are car-dependent convenience chains like Starbucks or lifestyle centers in some wealthier areas, which are all just consumer-centric businesses modeled after how on-the-go we've become. Plus, every town still has that one bar where everyone meets and then drunkenly drives home from. But those are often depressing too, because rather than being one of several third places, they've become the single place people go each week to escape their life's routine. Because if you have to drive over 20 minutes to and from work every day, you likely don't have the time or the energy to then drive to a third place.
Well, I think something too currently, like I think, the 20-minute commute and the work and all that stuff, but I think what happens now is that it was pretty commonplace, to go work out in the morning or go work out after work, or after work stop by the bar and have a beer, or after work go to your tennis club or go to the driving range and hit balls. I think now, and those are just a few things, but there's tons of hobbies and tons of different things that people did. But now I think people are just they get their dopamine fix and they get their kicks, they get their rocks off by doing stuff alone and doing stuff via their phone or doing stuff on the computer or doing stuff, Netflix binging and stuff like that. It's just so different now, and it's too early, I guess, to tell like, hey, is this worse? Is this better? It certainly seems like it's worse. But I mean, I know a lot of people, if you were to ask them, like, what are you going to do tonight? Like, what's your plans? A lot of them, and ask yourself this or ask your friends this, but their plans are, I'm going to get off work. I'm going to go home. I'm going to sit on the couch and I'm about to absolutely destroy 4 episodes of Stranger Things. Or I'm going to just watch. I have like 5 shows I have to catch up on. I have, 4 podcasts to listen to. I've got all that shit going on. Not to mention people who unintentionally or intentionally spend 2 to 3 hours just scrolling, just going through Twitter, going through Instagram, going through whatever. And, when there wasn't all that waiting for you, I think you were way more adept or way more likely to just like fill your time. Same with being a kid. I was just talking to some people about this being a kid. When I got home from school in the early 90s or the mid 90s, I would go play outside. I would have to go fill my time for like 3 hours. I didn't have any options. The other options were just sitting in the house. I didn't have streaming services. I didn't have any of that stuff at my fingertips. I couldn't even talk to my friends. I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have instant messaging. It wasn't even possible to talk to my friends until the next day. I guess I could call their house, but then I'm attached to a landline phone, so all of a sudden then you're much more likely to fill your time doing stuff outside of your house or outside of your normal little routine.
Other than maybe on a Friday night. This is why people try to replicate community online through multiplayer video games and forums and social media groups.
I mean, I'm telling you guys, I'm so far ahead of these people, it's unbelievable.
It's also how a lot of alternative scenes for skating and music are created in the suburbs by angsty kids who carve out spaces in basements and fire halls and abandoned lots. Good third places are hard to come by today. Ones that encourage regulars to just hang out for hours, talking to strangers or reading books with little...
I had a video about this a long time ago, but I talked about like arcades and movie theaters and malls, and I just kind of went over a little bit of that, but it's not, it doesn't take a philosopher to realize like how stuff's changing. Like an arcade, right? Like an arcade was a little bit before my time, but an arcade, you would go and that's where like you would play games with your friends. Now you play games with your friends online. Like it's one of those things where the internet and social media, however you want to phrase it, the digital domains, digital space is probably the greatest invention of all time, for sure. But it's also come with such a price. And I think now with this pandemic, the social aspect has taken an absolute beating. I mean, people struggle with just like silence. People struggle with just being by themselves because they're so tuned into stuff. They're so used to hearing things and being, like there's that meme where it's like, can you even eat without watching YouTube? People would just put on YouTube, and I do this. People would just put on YouTube and have it playing like in the background while they're eating. I do this too. They'll have YouTube playing while they're on their phone while they're eating. Like they're receiving so much stimulation. The idea of just like sitting at a table with nothing happening and just eating seems insane. And I know it sounds like, oh no, it's not that insane. But when's the last time you did that? Like when's the last time you just sat down at a whatever table, bar stool, however you eat, sat there and just ate? I don't know the last time I did, honestly, because I always have YouTube playing. I always am scrolling Twitter. I'm always doing something on my phone or whatever. Like I'm guilty of it too.
Little to no pressure to buy things, or ones that don't encourage rushing out the door with mobile orders. When you build mixed-use neighborhoods that combine...
Okay, this is 2 videos, so we're going to watch the second one.
Support these places. Not to mention hoods that combine housing with commerce, foot traffic can support these places. Not to mention organic events pop up like block parties, barbecues, and yard sales.
So I was just at a bar Saturday. Man, I wish it was like the little... Man, I wish I could remember the name of that bar, but it was super awesome. But anyways, first time I had been there, and I just stopped in to grab a beer, and on the sign it said Monday was Monday Night Football and trivia. Tuesday was like steak night. Wednesday was like comedy night. Every night of the week was something. And it was like under an apartment building. So this is what he's talking about, where it's a bar, it's in a apartment area, so there's natural foot traffic, and there's events. So if you're there, like that is a social setting. That is a third place. And those are rare. And I live in a big city. Like those aren't normal in smaller cities where a bowling club or whatever of old age would be like the thing, darts clubs or whatever.
It's undeniable that technology has changed the ways we view community, but I don't think anything can replace the need for organic in-person connections that we get from third places. Without walkable communities, third places can't thrive. And without third places, we lose the heart of our communities.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have a community, right? Like you don't have a community if you aren't walking around, if you're only driving. You don't feel like you're part of something. And he touched on this too, but like farmer markets, festivals, things like that, those are such a great way for communities to build that, like those relationships. Because like I'm going to a festival tomorrow night, like a small festival in my hometown. And when I'm there, I'll see people I haven't seen in years. We'll kind of catch up. We'll say, hey, well, whatever. And you'll feel like you're part of like living community. But that's once a year. That's a once in a year kind of festival. So, I would tell people to like force yourself to do this kind of stuff. Like force yourself to go to the farmer's market. Even if you don't buy anything, just go there. Force yourself to go to a festival when your community has it. Force yourself to get involved in in things. Like I know like chili cook-offs or barbecue cook-offs, or I mean, cities have all kinds of stuff like that. Force yourself to do it. If you have kids, force yourself to bring your kids to the Child's Day parade, or the whatever Santa at the mall, or just like things that are going away, things that could easily be replicated. Like you don't have to go to a farmer's market. You can order your Walmart stuff online. You can order shoes from the mall, but every once in a while go to the mall. Every once in a while do that kind of stuff, or go to a coffee shop. Instead of just ordering Starbucks on your app and having it sitting there waiting for you, go walk down the street to a coffee shop, or drive to a little coffee shop, walk around an old bookstore. So it sounds stupid, but I think it is important. And the social ability of people is just so damn bad. Like it's so terrible. I love a bar, like I love sitting at a bar, and I have no problem going by myself, but it's crazy how bad people are at just easy social interactions, and I think that's why we have people who are just downright weird. Like we have incels, or these super aggressive people, or just weird people who don't understand how to have social interactions, because now they're 2, 3, 4 years without social interactions, and it's only getting worse. It's the same with if you meet someone who, like if you met someone who hypothetically was like living on their own in the woods for their entire life, their social abilities would be terrible, because they've never done it, or they just don't know the social cues. That's just not part of their life. But I think there's people now who, I would say this all really popped off in 2005, 2006, like with social media and the internet. So, you're getting now to where people are, 10 years or so, maybe a little less, but whatever, somewhere in there, where people are pretty tried and true in these bad social habits and these bad social, what they do now, these like regimens. So it's only going to get worse. I think people have to make a concerted effort to join clubs. I think, instead of taking the easy way out, and instead of doing like Goodreads, for example. I love Goodreads, and Goodreads is an app for people who like reading, who like books. You can like log your books on there. You can chat with other people who have read the books. Instead of doing that, you probably do, or you probably should start a book club or join a book club. And even if it's just 5 or 6 people meeting once a month to talk about a book or something, that's probably just so much more beneficial to the humanity side of you than using an online service. So this is a good video. I think shared spaces, third spaces, walkable areas in your community things, I think all that is just dying, sadly. And hopefully, I think things are cyclical. I think things are, they do move in a circle, but we've never had something like social media. We've never had something like the internet or digital spaces. Will we go in a cycle here? Will we go in a circle where eventually people will start going back to share spaces and third places and stuff like that? Or will we just move forward in this kind of digital society? I don't know, but I hope we get back to some of the community things for sure.